All right, it says we're live.
And we're trying a different microphone. So if there's audio quality issues, yep, let's do this. No, this is
Yeah.
my job today. Oh, yeah. Okay, audio is good. Excellent. If you would like to be more awake than we seem to be this afternoon, drink King Harv's and tell him where you heard about him so we get more coffee here because I think we need it.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, in aid of support the blanket fort, because Tim has just had to go back and make sure that the water is dripping so that we don't lose the pipes at the blanket fort because it's going to be cold this weekend.
4 degrees. And
I
it's 72 right now.
Yeah, I know it's lovely out there right now.
Yeah.
Oh, so the microphone we switched to is the built-in one in Jim's laptop.
So if it screws up, yeah, it's all on me. This is the third try on this one today.
Yeah, it was going in and out earlier, so I may have to. I'll bring another cable over.
All right, we'll
and do
try
some
that.
tests. It uses an odd size cable, and I just happened to have some because I used to have a camera that required that size cable.
The only thing I did though was straighten the damn thing back up.
I'm thinking,
why did it quit working?
The connection is loose.
Yeah,
it
could be.
So anytime
just-
there's wigglies, yes. The Blue Yeti Egg Tiger.
Yeah, which was a brand new donated mic. It's a good mic.
Oh, the mic's fine. I think it's the cable.
Yeah.
Usually when these things go wrong, test the cables first.
Yeah, shoot the cable and get on with it. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, hey Jesse, and everybody else. Yeah.
We appreciate y'all tracking us down all over the internet today.
Yeah, God.
So
no, I have not.
I have not seen the Godzilla movie. I might actually want to see that. I very rarely watch movies anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I got too much other stuff going on.
Right. I mean, even at home.
We show them that one cartoon.
Oh yes, that was
that
cute.
meme. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Speaking of Godzilla and kaiju, this was.
Everybody has their different fidget toys. For her, yeah, it's not the standard fidget toy. You got to get closer.
Well, I didn't draw this. This is somebody else's cartoon, but it is brilliant. I love it. So, but I was telling him that I don't fidget. I do constructive fidgeting. I draw.
Yeah.
Usually that's what I'm doing during the stream.
Yeah.
Is drawing. So it differs your
I'm glad I was not taking a drink of anything when I saw that comment.
Oh, Eric wants to know if you do watch the Godzilla, will you review the naval scene?
No. Oh. Most of the scenes in movies tend to be either pro or con, depending on what service you were in, if any, or how much history you've read.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality or lack thereof is often interesting. I remember a bunch of us went and saw Hunt for Red October when it first came out. In the opening scene, and we actually went and saw it in the theater up in Northern Virginia. In the opening scene, there were about 6 of us who went, "That's not Murmansk." And we were commenting throughout the movie, not politely. And as we were leaving, the guy that was sitting behind us apparently had been listening to us. And as we're walking out, he goes, "The hell do you guys do for a living?"
We can't tell you.
Military. Let me guess. Navy. Yeah, as a matter of fact. He goes, "Yeah, figures. Stomp, 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 stomp." But I watched a couple of movies with some folks that were rather intimately familiar with World War II battles, and
Ooh.
they had some commentary about Band of Brothers, among others. And the one thing that people thankfully do not get to experience is the smell.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the one thing that anybody that's been in combat, been overseas, it's always the smells that tie everything together. And that's not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, smell is one of the strongest ties to memory.
Yeah.
So it is. I can absolutely believe that that's one of the things that is an issue.
Well, Winkle Red, a lot of the tactics weren't necessarily wrong, but it was the way they were presented. When they present a 6-hour battle in 5 minutes, you never get that speed in real time.
And there's got to be a constraint between the storytelling,
Yeah.
the need for the pacing of the story, and reality.
Well,
There's,
and
there's a disconnect
yeah.
there.
Well, in any movie, you can never accurately portray the book because you don't have time to develop all the secondary characters. You don't have the time to put in those delays that would have occurred in reality.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put in the smell of napalm, for example. Yeah. And the guns, weapons, most of them were leased. So that was always an issue in a lot of the older movies because the weapons weren't necessarily correct because nobody had those weapons. Yeah. Yeah, Raptor, that was another one. The Yadrang vets, the real ones, said Basil Plumley was not nearly mean enough, even with Sam Elliott portraying him. Yeah. Uh, Black Hawk Down is another one. If you've been overseas, you understand the smells.
Mm.
Vietnam was a particular smell. It was rotting vegetation and human excrement. That was the main smell that hit everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I intellectually I can understand that.
Yeah.
Jungle, it's hot, it's wet. There's going to be a lot of molds,
Yeah.
and they used human excrement as fertilizer.
And
So-
as David says, roasting pork, long
Mhm.
pig. If you've ever smelled the results of napalm or anything like that where a human body's involved, it smells like pork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my day job is very tied to a desk, very, very boring, very dry, a lot of documents. One of my coworkers announced at the team meeting today that tomorrow's his last day. He is going off to be a professional firefighter in New York City. He's former Army, nice young man. I'll miss him. Very level-headed from every interaction
Yeah.
I've had with him, but it's going to be a shock to his system. Now, he's had to have gone through training, and I don't know what he did in the Army. I never asked him.
Yeah.
But to go from what we do to that is going to be a huge swing. So, and it's a Rita.
Hey, Rita.
She's having a day like we are. You look beautiful.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. Are y'all already live?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're talking.
Come on and join us.
So,
Oh, you want me to?
Sure.
yes.
Okay.
Drag up a chair.
Yeah, just for a little bit. I've got to ship a couple of packages before 4:30. Sure, I'll pull up a chair.
Yeah.
What are y'all talking about?
Well, we were talking about unpleasant smells, but now that you're here, let's talk about good smells.
Yeah.
Should I take that personally?
No.
No, not at
Speaking
all.
of unpleasant smells.
Well, then, just to close that line of thought off, thankfully, they never did smell-o-vision with the movies.
Mm.
Thankfully.
Well, John Waters did do a a scratch and sniff card for one of his films.
Why?
For giggles, why not? It was the 70s.
Yeah.
True. Experimentation
Mhm.
Yeah.
leads to innovation.
I have one of those cards actually. They were really collectible. They didn't make a lot of them, but like at some point, I think there's one. I mean, it's like unpleasant odors. Like I think one of them is fart.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That would be easy enough to do because you just use the hydrogen sulfide,
Yeah.
and that should be easy enough to capture on a scratch and sniff for the chemicals.
Oh, you want to hear something funny? This happened in the 1980s. I was working at the post office at the time. Some little local gas company, like in Peoria or someplace like that. So, Iowa, Illinois, one of those vowel heavy state names. Um, they the local gas company thought it would be a great idea to give people some idea of what to smell for, or what it's not, and they suffused their bills one month with a sulfuric smell, like rotten egg smell, and a lot of people at the post office got sick.
Oh, jeez.
no.
Yeah, it was a real problem. I mean,
Horrible idea.
they had to evacuate the building and go in with hazmat suits, take all of the offending material out, and then deliver it in little sealed packages or something.
Oh,
Like
joy.
Yeah.
the recipients wanted that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, to change streams, so to speak, kind of want to follow up what we were talking about on Tuesday about writing. One of the things is, as a writer, there is no right way or wrong way. Everybody writes the way that fits them. Now, we have friends, and we were talking about this earlier, that can do transcription using Dragon Voice.
Dictation and
Dictation.
transcription. I cannot, by the way.
I can't either. Southern language, it don't work.
And I tried it with my recorder was high quality, my microphone was not, and I was driving and dictating at the same time, and trying to do transcription from that resulted in a mess that I'm cleaning up now 3 years later and cussing my earlier self.
Yes, David does it. Also, Martin Shoemaker does it. They're both successful at it, but they've also taken a lot of time to learn it.
And you have to invest a significant amount in your equipment, I think, based on what my efforts resulted in. So
Yeah, Dragon Transcript just says assorted banjo noises. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But the other thing that people don't realize is writing takes time. I figure I spend an average of 500 to 600 hours to write one novel, 80 to 90,000 words. That's a quarter of a year. And I can't put a novel out every 30 days. Some people do. The other thing is I can't edit my own work. So I pay people to do that.
Yep.
I also know that I need help because what's up here and what ends up on paper sometimes skips steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
No. I'm
You
I'm
caught
relating.
me on a couple of them.
Well, I'm relating though. I mean, I relate to it. The thing, and I am. Am I interrupting?
No.
Go. Add.
Something I tell my students is that one of the curses and yet comforts of writing is that it's not perfectible. The best writer in the world needs an editor because we are blind. We are nose blind to our own stink.
Yeah.
And so, there's something they used to call rule of good form. I don't know if that's still a thing, but it means that like if you saw a drawing of a bunny rabbit and half of the drawing was missing, your brain fills in the gaps.
Yeah.
And that's a bunny. You don't need all the lines on the paper to know. You've got the suggestion of it. Your brain is filling in because you with your own work, you have this knowledge of what's in the story and what those important components are. So you're going to remember that you put them in there and it's all in there and it's good. And in that same way, we will gloss over repetitions, like we have the word "the" twice in a row, and that kind of thing. And our brain is like going, yeah, we got it, I got it. And like I said, it's one of the comforts, the fact that the finest authors in the world take many, many years to edit what they work. In fact, Wordsworth died in 1850. He published a poem in 1798 when he was in his 20s that that he felt was not quite finished, and he edited that poem for the next 52 years after it was published. He was still editing it when he died. And if Wordsworth, one of the objectively most amazing writers in the world, whether or not you like him,
Yeah.
if he needed 52 years to fix a little poem, I think I'm going to give myself a pass on being, saying shit on. Sorry, did I say that out loud? Oh, no, I'm being lazy and giving myself an excuse. At some point, you got to pinch it off and let it go.
Which is exactly what I was going to say, which is don't do that, because you have to stop at some point, put it out there, and walk off and go do the next thing.
And
because there are too many writers that get focused on it has to be perfect, and they go over it and over and over it, filing down the high points until what they've got left is a perfect sphere of nothingness.
Yeah.
And even if you have multiple editors, you have copywriters.
Oh yeah.
You're still going to end up with
There will always be
misspellings,
a
punctuation
typo.
errors in the final copy. Period.
Because we're all human.
Yep.
But I think that there is a wrong kind of writing, and the wrong writing is not writing. Even if you're going to write something bad, it's in the same way that there's a Bible verse that says, "Make a joyful noise to the Lord." I don't think that. I think that somebody with a terrible voice who can't carry a tune should holler their brains out in church, because it's supposed to be a joyful noise. It doesn't say it has to be tuneful or pleasant to anyone else. The act is the important part. Get it down, write your stuff, have good editors and people who will be honest with you and give you a nudge in the right direction.
And be willing to take that
And
feedback.
yes, take the criticism, because the critique is an important part of refinement. So continually working and refining that process is all how we do it. And in that process, you will find your voice. Even if you feel like you can't do it, you don't know what you're doing, you learn by doing. So just write. If you have the urge, if you can't think of anything to write, sit down in front of start a blog and start keeping a record of your days. That you don't have to share it with anyone. You can do it in Google or whatever documents, but start making an effort and start putting your ideas in kill those pixels, don't spare none. Just do them, and you will start to see an evolution in your own writing style. And if all you say on the first thing is some mouthy broad told me I should write a blog, so here I go, here it is, this sucks, I don't know what I'm doing, maybe I'll come back, maybe I never will. And then if that's your post, that's a start. And then the next day, or a week later, or 12 years later, whenever you do it, like I said, I feel like the wrong writing is the writing you don't do. It's just like the unasked question.
Speaking of which, somebody hadn't put up a post in a while.
Holy crap! I've been thinking about it. I was thinking of that earlier. Yeah. What's funny is last year, I don't know, I'm just going to say it here. I posted it on my blog, and very few people read it, but I was diagnosed with cancer last summer, and it just it derailed my whole year. And the weird thing is I'd had somebody sent me earlier, like in spring, they sent me this horoscope, which I don't look at horoscopes, but somebody sent me an email. It was like, you're going to have the most amazing rest of the year. And you know what? It was amazing, but not like good amazing.
No.
And the funny thing is I was driving in town the other day, and I remembered this song by Joe Jackson from the early 80s or mid 80s. It was kind of bossa nova, or, kind of a Latin American beat that was amazing, called Cancer. And the song says, everything gives you cancer. No caffeine, no protein, no caffeine, no booze or nicotine. Anyway, it's the funniest, best song. But I thought it's funny that all that time I was grappling with the cancer thing that I didn't even think of that song. I'm manic. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I didn't know I was going to be hollering at y'all. But anyway,
that's all right.
I need to post. It was one of those things where everything just got derailed and all my plans went aft agley, as Robert Burns would say. But
well, you're not the only one.
And two things. One, I really like your idea of just starting to write something and starting to write a blog. I had a really sweet interaction earlier today with a writer on Substack. I had posted about my short story that I released earlier this week hitting the #1 in the slot where I wanted it
Wow.
to hit #1.
That's
Which,
congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, which told me that what I had done to set it up to be there,
Mhm.
I had done it right. And he was being very encouraging. And in the course of going back and forth, realized that he's encouraging me and going, yeah, go on and do it. And he's been doing this for a short period of time, and I've been doing it for a while. But it was that kind of, I love that encouragement, and that, yeah, just start blogging and doing, in his case, he does essays, and he's evidently much younger and much more into pop culture than I am, for sure. But I went and looked at his stuff because he was just very sweet and encouraging. And it was like, sure, yeah, I'm going to go look at your stuff and like some of it and give you some traffic if I can, because that's what we do. We help
Yeah.
each other out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
the pool is deep and wide.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there are millions of writers out there. The number that actually finish a book is less than 1%.
Yeah.
So when you really think about that, that narrows the field down considerably. But we got 330 million people in the US,
Yeah.
over 1 billion worldwide. That's still a lot of people writing that are actually finishing a book and publishing it.
Yes, Becky, you are in the 1%.
Yeah.
I was going to say one more thing about criticism and about taking critiques. It can be really rough. Strive for a kind of dispassionate view to the criticism, and don't take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's the process of refinement is can be brutal. Woodshedding a work that you've created, and you may be really committed to something, and somebody says, no, I think it's better without this. Then there may be some bigger picture that you're missing, or maybe your critic is wrong. Get more than one opinion. A second opinion is a good thing before you excise vast swathes of text or ideas from your work. But at some point, you also need to recognize that if you are lucky to talk to somebody who's done it quite a bit and knows the field, someone like Cedar or like Jim here, then you're wise to really take on board and give serious consideration to their advice. And this is universal. And people who've not come up through a creative tradition where there's a serious artistic studio practice think that the criticism can feel really brutal and personal. It can feel so painful. But the truth of it is, you've what is it, long and hard, what is that Milton quote about, long and hard is the way that out of hell leads, the path that, something to that effect. It is a rough process, but don't be married to an idea of it was perfect when I first wrote it and it doesn't need any refinement, because I guarantee you missed something.
Yeah.
You can make it better.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, there's a point where you stop messing with it.
Yeah.
But just remember that these things make us better. And when you go back and look at things you have written, look at the first draft and then look at the criticism that you got from someone and how you changed it. And I think you will see that the person had a really good idea in many cases, and that they did steer you right.
Yeah. And like Larry said, having somebody chop your work into bloody sushi does make you better. But it's also a generational thing. My generation, I'm probably the oldest one on this bunch. We were taught to accept criticism and responsibility. The younger generations have not been.
Mm-mm.
So they don't like to accept any kind of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an attack. That's the point.
No.
It's
Yeah.
not an attack against you personally. It's the fact that you've left something out. You've made a mistake in your punctuation. You've made a mistake in your grammar. Hell, I put a bunch of commas at the end of mine and tell my editor, put them wherever the hell you want them.
He does. He's salty like that.
I'm not an English major. I spent 40 years writing technical documents for the government.
And this is a thing that I'm going to diverge off onto. Dave Freer had been on Twitter for a little bit too long. I'm on Twitter for the orchid photos. So I don't know. He wanders off into other places, but he found someone that was saying that, in all seriousness, that you should not be a professional writer if you don't have a degree in English and or creative writing or whatever,
Ugh.
which is
Read between the lines.
a complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah.
And I say this sitting next to a dear friend who is a professional in multiple senses of that.
And a teacher in college.
Right. And I mean, my degree is forensic science and investigation. So I shouldn't be a professional writer and artist? No, I'm not going to. That kind of credentialism is nonsense. You can absolutely write without having the formal education to do so.
But you need to have people read your stuff and fix it.
Yes.
I have about 10 alpha and 10 beta readers, so 20 folks that look at my stuff before y'all ever get to see it. Now, I do put snippets up on my blog, and I do value the contributions that I get from there because all of those inputs get fixed. And the interesting point is, out of those 20 people, and some of them are experts in their field, no two people tend to catch the same thing. Everybody finds something different, which is odd, but that's the way it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
Tiffany mentions diagramming a sentence. Diagramming a sentence is actually fun. If you take away the I'm scared of it, breaking down a sentence and looking at how it hangs together is really interesting.
Okay.
I'm probably one of the last of my
Fine.
generation to have been taught diagramming sentences, and I didn't teach my children, sadly.
That
So
fell
like
out
being
the-
able to butcher a hog properly.
I can do that too.
She can bone her own salmon.
That's more
not
important.
A euphemism. I was going to say that about my creative tradition that I grew up in was classical music with flute and then with vocal training. And there's nothing more personal than your instrument being your voice. It's your body. It's not just the larynx. It's everything that is a resonator, all of this. And yet a voice lesson can be a brutal thing, especially when you're working at a professional, semi-professional level. And you go in and you might have your teacher say, that was the worst sound I've ever heard. And you can't crumple. You got to stand up and fight back and be like, no, bitch, I deserve to be here. I merit your consideration. And but it can be collaborative. But I was going to say that art, all forms of art, I believe, are far too important, including literature, even crap literature, all far too important to be left in the hands of the professional.
Yeah. The other thing that you've got to do is to understand what is productive of your time. That means if you're not that great an artist, you don't need to be doing covers. If you can't edit, you don't need to be editing. You need to be writing. And also doing research. Now, research can turn into rat holes.
Yes.
Isn't it fun?
Yeah.
It is. Dive down the rabbit hole and never come back.
Yeah. 6, 8, 10 hours of research for one sentence in a book.
Well,
Probably more than necessary, sadly.
But that also contributes to what I was talking about, where you will write something knowing what's in your head and it will not get on paper or make any sense because the people reading it don't have your background knowledge.
Yeah.
So that's an area where you have to really trust your readers to point out those things and say, hey, you need to explain what the hell you're doing here.
Yeah. I was told at one point that you don't change something unless 3 people point it out as being something that was an issue, which is good to a certain point. But occasionally you'll have one person be like, hey, and then you go back and you look at it and you're like, oh, right.
Yeah.
That there's like 2 more paragraphs that are still in my head that didn't make it onto the page.
and then you wake up at 3 a.m. a few days later and go, did I put that in?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think I did.
Uh-huh.
Well, and like Ag mentioned earlier, he reads and tends to write notes and send those to the author, which he's done for me. And I do appreciate it because I will actually go back and correct a published novel based on that feedback that I get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to get 5 or 6, and then I'll just go back and fix all the errors because they're going to be out there.
Right. I mean, I just went back and put new covers on my Pixie Noir trilogy. And and I didn't publicize it. I just put the new covers out there, and then immediately saw sales start to do this, which was like,
Yeah.
yay, validated the work I put into that. But when I was doing it, I also reformatted them through the formatting program I use now and edited them while I was at it.
Yeah.
And because I found stuff in there that I'm like, okay, this is awkward or whatever. I don't think I had any major spelling errors still, but right, it needed to be done, and I was like, all right, it's been 10 years since I put the first one out.
Yeah.
It's time for some changes.
I'm not going to change my covers because my graphic artist did a great job with them and I like them.
Yeah, I was never
And-
I mean,
Yeah.
those covers were some of my first
Right.
earliest, and they needed changing.
Yeah. Larry makes a good point. Acronyms only make sense to certain groups of people, even if you explain it, which I started out, I had to do that in my first few books because I tended to overuse acronyms.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. What is the first thing that CPA comes to mind? What do you think of?
Certified public accountant.
Right. Same.
No,
Yeah.
closest point of approach.
Okay.
Ah,
Yeah. And the other thing is, in a technical writing setting,
Yeah.
and you know this, you're supposed to, at the beginning of whatever you're writing, you have the full expanded word,
Right.
and then the acronym, and then
Yeah.
after that you just use the acronym. That doesn't work in a novel.
No,
It needs to be repeated more than once, or I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Also, where do I find this? In a technical document, I know I can go back to the beginning
Yeah.
and figure it out. But in a novel,
yeah. Well, actually, with the first couple of them, I footnoted them because I got so many people bitching about it.
I like footnotes. I'm
But-
weird that way.
The other problem you run into is even in the real world where you'll have the same acronym with different meanings.
Oh yeah.
We had a meeting at a contractor who will not be named, thank God. Don't have to deal with those assholes anymore. In one day, in 6 presentations, the same acronym was used 4 times with 4 different friggin' meanings in the same company.
that's exhausting.
My favorite is the acronym POS.
Yeah.
Piece of shit. Oh,
Right? I mean, that's where my brain always goes, but it also does mean point of sale and
Yeah.
a couple of other things as well.
Yeah.
But I always automatically fill in piece of shit.
Yeah.
yeah. My dad was a mechanic, and that was an expression I heard early on. Somebody would ask my dad to look at their car, and my mom would, dad would come by, come back home, and mom
Yeah.
would say, "Well, how was it?" And he said, "POS."
Yeah.
And and it took years for me to get out of my mom what POS was, because
Yeah.
my mom washed my mouth out with soap for teaching my sister the word butthole.
Yeah. And Larry brings up
when I was
another,
3, when I was 12. Sorry, go ahead.
another good one with the adjectives. Cleaning barrel. How many people are going to understand what a cleaning barrel is? If you're not military or law enforcement, you probably don't have a clue.
I don't know what that is. A cleaning barrel?
Yeah, it's a barrel. It's usually outside of a facility where you point the muzzle of your gun into that barrel
Mm-hmm.
and clear it. It's filled with sand normally.
Okay, that
So
makes
that
sense.
if you do get a discharge,
mm-hmm.
it's going into sand.
Safe.
Yeah.
Right.
It could be a barrel or a young lady. Yeah.
Who said that?
Larry.
Larry.
Classy.
Larry's a good friend of mine. So
He said cleaning barrel.
Yeah.
I think he meant clearing barrel, or maybe
no,
barrel.
clearing barrel.
Clearing barrel,
Yeah.
cleaning barrel. I honestly, it could be either.
So
Yeah.
So from a technical standpoint, jargon, acronyms, things
Yeah.
like that are very insider, unless your audience is solely that insular group,
Yeah.
you want to avoid that kind of thing, because you want broad appeal ideally. I mean, if you've got millions of people who are in a very specialized field who will be enough to support your whole writing career, by all means write to those people.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, you should be shooting for the broad middle. Hit
Mhm.
the side of the barn.
With the exception that, and this is something that gets endlessly debated as well, which is writing reading level.
Yeah.
So what reading level are you writing for? And when I was writing Vulcan's Kittens as a young adult book, I was told you're supposed to make your reading level, I forget what it was, but I think it was like fourth grade. And I'm like, no, I absolutely refuse to write down to teenagers
Yeah.
because I, as a teenager, would have hated that.
Mm.
I was reading at college level in fourth grade. So I wasn't going to write twaddle,
Yeah.
and have since been complimented on the fact that that book, I mean, it's readable by just about anyone. There's probably some words that somebody that didn't have a very high reading level would have to look up. But here's the important part, which is if you're going to use words and concepts that are above the reading level of your audience, you want to put them in context in such a way they can understand it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like the clearing barrel.
Yeah.
If it's in context, they don't need to know what it is so they can figure it out.
Well, and there again, you're writing to a particular group.
Mm-hmm.
If you're writing, like my first series was to gun nuts, because the guns were right,
Mm-hmm.
the characters were realistic, they weren't perfect. Because that was the things that ticked me off about most of the novels I was reading.
Yeah.
So I knew I was writing to a niche audience. So I used a lot of things in there that were niche pieces, in other words,
Yeah.
the language, the steps, things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's knowing your audience and writing to your audience, and
Yep.
also and finding your audience, which is why the orange tag on my little short story romance was important. It meant I had managed to find my audience.
Yeah.
And get it close enough that there was actually enough sales to bring the book up.
Yeah.
Because as an author, that's the other thing is if you're going to read your reviews, which you probably should not until you're an
Yeah.
established writer, but if you're going to read your reviews, understand that they will give you a gauge of whether or not you're finding your proper audience. Because if you're getting a lot of negative reviews or confused reviews, it means that you are not finding your audience. Your audience is the one that wants to read your book, and you will find that your reviews, your readership come together best when you're marketing your book properly and finding your audience.
Yeah. The other thing that you've got to also remember is that as you write, you're going to get better.
Mm.
That first novel is always going to suck. The second one's going to be better. The third one's going to be better. The fourth one ad infinitum,
Mm-hmm.
however many you put out. But by the same token, how much you change your style of writing between those novels also is going to have an impact. Yeah. Dave Weber's tomes of definitions in the Safehold series. Dave Weber is known for his info dumps.
And a lot of people like them. A
Yeah.
lot of people like them. You know this because he sells a lot of books.
Yeah.
This does not mean that everybody should do that because not everybody is David Weber.
Right. I tend to write very sparse descriptions and not put info dumps in because I want, again, being an old fart, I grew up when you had to read the book or you listened to the music and built it in your head
Mhm.
because you didn't have a video of what you were supposed to be thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So you did everything in your head. I tend to write in that style, more of a storyteller than an author, and let the reader build the characters in their head. Of course, that also can come back to bite you in the butt.
And I write even more succinctly than he does. And I know this because he's edited me and asked me to put in more description. So,
Yes.
yes.
Especially since I had no idea what the hell you were talking about.
But that's a case of getting editing and going, oh yeah, right, that would be important, and then going back and putting it in.
Yeah.
So you get the feedback, you take it, and you learn from it. And hopefully, I've learned from it because Collexit was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So.
But also, it's a group effort.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is where you need the buy-in from your alpha and beta readers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because you don't want people that are going. I start hissing when people don't want to know what your characters look like. Yeah, okay, that I can see your point too, Tiffany.
And Tiffany's an artist, so for her, there's a lot more visual going
Yeah.
along with the textual. I'm the same way.
Mine tend to be very generic descriptions,
Mm-hmm.
which Tiffany, for your edification, I did have one character who, after a lady cussed me out for killing her favorite character, my payback was I made her an alpha reader. So I sent her one of the books in the series, and I had described the characters having a mustache. I got an email back from her in all caps that Felix does not have a mustache. Yes, ma'am. Take mustache out.
Oh.
So yes, there are different approaches, but here again, everybody is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
It-
I do it, how Cedar does it, how Rita does it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rita's stories are hilarious
Oh.
because they have little twists in there
Mm-hmm.
that you have to catch, and sometimes you don't catch them until 2 or 3 pages later, and then you go, "Wait a friggin' minute! Damn, got me again."
Well, and the thing I really like about Rita's writing is that she's got a very strong voice.
Yes.
And part of it's because I know you, but when I'm reading your stuff, I hear your voice in my head, which is kind of cool. And but it comes, your voice translates onto paper. You have not edited your voice down to bland nothingness,
Mhm.
which I do find occasionally when I'm reading an author, is that they don't have a voice or a style of their own for whatever reason, whether it's through editing or through their own polishing efforts.
Just
But
feels generic.
it
kind of.
does, and that's not
Yeah.
a compelling read.
AJ, you ought to be on our side when the characters start arguing with each other in your head while you're trying to write the damn things.
Yes.
Or you have characters that take off in digressions you do not expect.
Or they cock a snook and stop talking to you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or as has happened to Alma, one of her characters in the Familiar series, Author, the owner of the bookstore, was supposed to be a throwaway character.
Oh no. Oh, definitely not.
Yeah. And as she said one time, she said, he was not supposed to be a major player. He was a throwaway. And the son of a bitch wouldn't go away.
And in true Arthur style, the more you read the Familiars books, the more you realize that he might be the main character in
Yeah.
that series.
Yep. And Alma doesn't cuss. And that day she was cussing.
Oh. Only writers have imaginary friends who stop talking to them, Jesse says. Jesse's not wrong.
As opposed to the other.
You know, I was going to say for aspiring authors or people who may be thinking, I think I can do this. If you can be an alpha or a beta reader, that is a really great process. One of the best things that ever happened to my writing was working in the writing center, helping
Yeah.
students proofread
Mhm.
and edit their work at the university, because the funny thing is I started reading in a more I became more dispassionate as a reader, and became more critical, not in a punitive or mean way, but it made me actually there was no better woodshedding that I did than when I saw one of my mistakes in someone else's paper and went, oh, I do that too. This is
Yeah.
not great.
Mhm.
And it was one of the best things that ever happened in my writing,
Yeah.
because it made me pull back. It made me look at writing from a more neutral standpoint and look at how can this be improved? How can this be
Mhm.
made to communicate its ideas more effectively? And anyway, it was one of those things that I didn't realize was doing me a favor in the process, but it actually was.
Yeah, and of course, some of your commentary would some of the things that you were having to put up with.
Mm.
Roof reading was a thing.
Oh
Yes.
my goodness. Yeah, the struggle. The struggle is unending.
Yeah.
I came up through what was for a long time a more traditional of critique groups. And we talk about criticism, and we always think of it as in the negative, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be. Being critical, reading critically, watching critically is not, you're not always trying to take something apart. It's literally, um, there's a difference between taking something apart and leaving it broken and destroyed,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and taking it apart to see what made it tick.
Yeah.
But that implies that you're putting it back together again, um, to see how it functions. And that is the criticism that I think we need. And as far as I was involved with Critters, which was a big science fiction group, um, I was involved with them for a few years in my early part of my writing career. And the anonymous critique rounds, because I mean, huge group of people, you didn't know who you were critiquing and they didn't know you.
Mhm.
So it gave you that complete step back from this isn't a friend, this isn't a family.
Mhm.
But it also taught me that every reader brings things to the story that you didn't necessarily put in there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's something you have to evaluate as a writer as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Eric, Sir Brash, y'all have fun. Yeah, that's the other part of writing is you never know what background the reader has.
Mhm.
So the reader may have a very similar background to you, especially if you're writing something toward the military,
Mm-hmm.
or they may be diametrically opposite.
I had an editor come at me for how a character was in a short story that I wrote early on in my thing. And he's like, someone that had experienced sexual assault would never react this way. Well, yes, they certainly do. And it's actually not that all uncommon. So that was one of those that, I mean, I withdrew it from
Yeah.
the submission process for that because there was no point in arguing with an editor that thought he knew better than I did
Yeah.
there. So, but yeah, it's the reader brings a lot with them to the book, which sometimes we can use.
Yeah.
The tropes, the twisted tropes. You can use tropes as a shortcut because you know the reader's bringing certain baggage in. And if you do it cleverly.
Yeah. Yeah, James, that's a good point. The reader's creating a universe in their head when they're reading your stuff. It's not yours, it's theirs. You're right.
Yes. Yep.
Because they are the ones that are creating that world in their heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And for my writing, I like to give them room to create that universe so that it becomes a shared collaborative process.
The other thing that you got to do, and we haven't really talked much about it, and we're about out of time, is covers.
Mm.
I can't do cover art. Cedar does, Rita does to a certain extent. We have other friends that do covers. My cover artist is another blogger who's been a longtime friend in real life, and she and her husband happen to be graduates of Philadelphia School of Art. So they know what they're doing, and I gladly pay them for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also send them copies of an early version of the book so that they can read it, get a sense of it, and then go do the research on what kind of covers
Yeah.
you want to do.
Yep, because that's the first thing that I do when I'm talking to a potential client is I need to know, I don't necessarily need to read the whole book. I don't usually have time to read someone's 100,000 word novel when I've been asked to do a cover for them. I do need a synopsis. I need a pretty firm idea of what the main characters look like if I'm going to be portraying those. But more than that, the first thing that I need is an actual accurate subgenre so that I can create a cover that will market the book.
Yeah.
The book very rarely should have a cover on it that depicts an actual scene from the book.
Yeah.
The book cover is a marketing tool and needs to be almost a summary in an image of the entire book. That's difficult to do.
Yeah, but at the same token, It has to be viewable in a thumbnail,
Yes.
which
Yep.
means it has to be fairly simple
Yes.
because,
And it has to have decent contrast.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have art and it's all dark things with dark things,
yeah,
like I've been seeing some indies doing dark spaceships in dark space scenes, and I'm like, this is not going to work. When you see that at thumbnail, it is black with some text on it. Hopefully, the text isn't dark.
it may or may not be readable.
Right. So,
That crap.
Becky, you do not need to find somebody to do your covers. Give me a call. But it's the cover can be something from the book. It does not have to be, and sometimes you don't want it to be because you also don't want to give away a plot point, especially not a pivotal plot point on the cover of the book. You're not imposing, I'm telling you.
But it is good. Good to consider what it will look like scaled down to the size of a postage stamp,
Yes.
Yeah.
because that's what somebody will see on the screen. And
Yes.
if it's something that's enough, I mean, you can just have the shirtless dude.
Yeah. There's a thumbnail.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The top one, not the bottom one. I don't know what the hell that one is.
Jim's covers are very distinctively Jim's covers. And he was talking earlier about not needing to change them, and he doesn't, because they are his covers. His readers know what to expect.
Yeah.
Jim is a bit of a rule breaker there.
In fact, you can tell his book from the spine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell. You can
Yeah.
just, if they weren't in a row, you could tell.
And
which ones
that's
were
a
his.
credit to Tina
Right.
because she knows what the hell she's doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, but even more than that, what Tina's done with your books is outside of genre conventions,
Yeah.
which probably hurt you at first, but at this point, you have an established readership, and they know her covers. They know that
Yeah.
belongs to you.
It's your branding.
Yeah.
It is. It is your branding. You have built a brand.
Yeah.
Which is something that authors need to consider, but you also, it's a hard road to hoe to break all the rules, and the fact that Tina is really good has let Jim do that.
We don't break all of them. We just break a lot of them.
And unfortunately, I see a lot of indie authors that don't know enough about the rules to know which ones they can and can't break.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm trying to educate, because yes, I will do covers for hire for people, and there's times I'll do covers for people just because I like them and I want their books to succeed. But I've also written a lot over the years on how to create your own cover, not just because people, sorry, that comment caught me by surprise, and I'll come back to it in a second. You want to know how to create a cover, not necessarily because you're going to create it yourself, but if you hire someone,
Yeah.
you need to know that they're doing the right thing. Pamela Puff's trade font that she uses is my fault. I was working with her, and that font is that one came from me. So which is why I'm amused that Pam does her own covers, but she and I worked together for a while to develop her branding.
Yeah.
Which is where that comes from, because branding is important.
And the other thing is, you get a sense of people taking ownership for that, because they will look for your covers.
Mhm.
Because what you want to do, your cover can sell your book. Because if they know your style, they see that cover, they will pick that out of a lineup.
Yeah.
If you keep hopping between cover styles, they don't recognize it. They're going to go right over the top of it.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, I mean, we alluded to this with readers and the fiction, but readers and covers, they bring expectations to it. And if you see a cover that has a shirtless dude on it, you're pretty sure it's romance, and spicy romance at that.
Yeah.
If you see a cover that's got a cowboy riding off into the sunset on it, you're pretty sure that's a Western novel of some kind.
unless
So-
he doesn't have a shirt on, and then
it gets it gets muddy at the fringes. Okay.
I thought that was the mud wrestling afterwards.
That's a whole nother genre.
That is a whole nother genre. And we won't even get into the sentient jello
Yeah, I just said the kiddie pool full of Jello.
with eyes.
I did not go there. Y'all realize those two went there. I did not.
Can you brand your special ability of weird? Yes, it will take work. Actually, David's comment immediately under that of consume toes is an excellent illustration of branding a special ability of weird.
Yeah.
Because we all know consume toes, even if we don't know where it started from. And that was from Sarah Hoyt and Larry Correa collaborating, because that's all the brands of weird.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yes.
Weird early, weird often.
Yes.
Yes. But that's the beauty of what we do.
Yeah.
We can be professionally weird.
And it does take patience, and it takes time.
Yeah, no, you cannot expect to be an overnight success in this business. Um,
The overnight success is 10 to 15 years.
Exactly. And it's like the books that I put, the short story that I put out, and I targeted and I hit my goal of getting the orange tag. That immediately started lifting the sales of the other book in that I put out with that pen name almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
But because that 10 years has been building my audience and readership with my actual name instead of the pen name, when I finally decided I was going to go and put some effort into the pen name, I brought all of that work with me. It's not like I just suddenly 2 books and all of a sudden we get the orange tag.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. Robert Asprin's another fine myth. That whole series absolutely hilarious. But they were out there for years before they finally clicked.
Yeah. Differs. You keep telling yourself that.
No comment. And on that note, folks, we've wasted another hour of your time. Run for cover. I'd like to thank Cedar and Rita for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
What a surprise.
What such a good sport you are to
Oh.
sit down and join this
Oh, well, this was
craziness.
fun. This was fun. I'm feeling inspired. I need to do a lot of writing. In fact, we're expecting a winter storm this weekend. I'm about to charge a power pack that I have, and I'm going to be having my laptop and in the bed with my 2 little furry hot water bottles, and just under blankets and quilts, and
Yeah.
do some writing of my own.
Yes.
And you got to treat it like a business, folks. You got to sit down and do it.
You
Yep.
do.
Yeah. If you're having a rough day, channel that into the writing. Your character's going to have a bad day right along with you.
There's one of the best things that I show it to my students in my research writing course, was Neil Gaiman's commencement address to the New York Arts University or something. It's called Make Good Art.
Yeah.
And it's about 20 minutes. It's on YouTube. Watch that. One of the things he says, whatever you do, make good art.
Yeah.
If your dog runs off with the mailman, make good art. Your wife divorces you, make good art. You get fired and lose your leg in a cotton baler,
Yeah.
make good art. Do that. Do the thing. Make a habit of it. If this is something, if it's something you have the yearning to do, and not just writing, but if you want to carve something, do the thing. If you need supplies or something, find cheap ways to get them. Buy something used on eBay, and buy art supplies and bunches. I'm sure lots of aspiring artists have sold bundles of stuff that they bought for top dollar and everything. And there's many different ways to. I'm sorry, I'm going to blather here for just a minute. I will let you go soon. But but tuck in and do it. If you're having the yearning, we will never ever be as young again as we are at this very minute. And if you're 50 or you're 60 or you're 70 and you're saying, well, I don't know if I have 15 years left in the tank for an overnight success. You know what? If you live to be 90, you're going to look back at today and say, you know, I was pretty young. What was I waiting for? Why did I hesitate? Don't hesitate. If you need to write, get off of this thing, open a file and start your writing. Do it now. Do it. There will be a quiz. We will be testing you. So don't hesitate. Get in there and do it. Our lives are passing every minute we're accountable for. Do something with it. Do something you have a yearning and you may be doing something, you may be creating something, and I think you will, that will uplift and edify other people. Don't deny that to the world. Don't be stingy. Throw it out there.
Yeah.
Do it today.
And yes, Differ, the kids are your current business, but you'll see that profit down the road. Trust me.
Yes, that is the best business.
It is.
Remember, folks, don't sweat the petty stuff. Don't pet the sweaty stuff. Stay warm, especially
Stay
if you're
safe.
out here. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.